Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word. With 1 in 4 Americans struggling to afford their medications, we must push for bipartisan solutions to lower the cost of prescription drugs for patients and families. This was something that I heard about last week during my 4 town halls across New York's 21st Congressional District. Through good faith efforts on both sides of the aisle, real progress has been made to address this problem, including the passage of the 21st Century Cures Act and the reauthorization of the generic drug program. But we must do more, and we must do so on a bipartisan basis. We must continue to advance solutions that promote competition in the marketplace while enhancing transparency and accountability in drug pricing. Guided by these principles, we can lower costs for patients and families without sacrificing innovation and stifling the hope for new cures and even better treatments. Instead of building on this bipartisan progress, H.R. 3 presents a radical proposal that threatens Americans' access to life-saving medication. Let's be clear here. Government price controls, take-it-or-leave-it offers dressed up as negotiations, and the threat of a 95% sales tax is a tax on innovation and a tax on life-saving cures. Initial estimates suggest that H.R. 3 would result in $100 billion in cuts to research and development, resulting in fewer breakthrough cures, particularly for the most challenging and the rarest of diseases. Every member of Congress has met with advocates or survivors who are advocating for that next life-saving drug. Further, drugs that may be subject to these price controls are less likely to see the necessary investment since they will never be able to recoup the high cost of development. And particularly for the 5.8 million Americans living with Alzheimer's disease, almost 500,000 from my home state, New York, we have treatments but no cure. Everyone in this room knows families that have been impacted by Alzheimer's. Many of our own families have been impacted by those suffering from Alzheimer's disease. And despite the $70 billion that has already been invested in developing a cure for Alzheimer's, many of these efforts have sadly come up short. Recent failures late in the clinical trial process have increased the risk and reduced the incentives of investing in Alzheimer's disease research. But what we do have for them and their loved ones is hope. Hope that the American spirit of ingenuity and innovation will ultimately deliver a cure. There are currently 74 medicines in early stage development to treat Alzheimer's disease, any one of which could be the cure that millions of families desperately need. This amendment exempts drugs that treat or cure Alzheimer's disease from the list of drugs eligible for government price controls. With the adoption of this amendment, we can ensure that ongoing research and development to end this devastating disease for patients and families will not be stifled by H.R. 3. Preserving access to life-saving innovation and medical breakthroughs is critical in our fight against Alzheimer's disease and so many diseases. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I hope we can return to working together to focus on bipartisan solutions for the American people. I yield back.